All right. Today we have Jhana, a operations coach and consultant. So I'm so happy to be speaking with you again. I had a great time talking with you last time, so I'm really curious to pick your brain even further. So before we go into that, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, likewise, Sam. I am stoked to be here. Really glad we are continuing the conversation. A little bit about me. So I have worked in one form or another in operations for about 5 years now. I was the COO for first a digital marketing agency and then a coaching program that coached a lot of like hundreds of digital marketing agencies. And then last year, I actually started my own consulting and coaching firm. So I work with a portfolio of clients directly to help them scale their businesses, as well as coach other operators so that they can execute those best practices within their own companies.
Yeah, some really important pieces. Like I gathered the first time we chatted, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is like too much for me to grasp in like one conversation. We had to like put it into a second conversation. So I appreciate you giving me your time so I can pick your
Of
brain.
course.
But it's really, I think it's really important. There's a lot of things that as a business owner, as entrepreneurs, right, we don't really go into that headspace. We think about the money. How do we get clients? How do we, all that stuff. So the operations field is really, really important. But how did you actually get started, like as like the COO and beyond? How did you get started with that?
Totally. No, and it makes sense, right? I think operations is very much the black sheep of the business family. Like it's pretty unsexy, but the reality is that just like marketing and sales, at some point, every business needs operations, right? And the reality is that there's a pretty high degree of misunderstanding or a lack of clarity around what operations even is and the role that it fills in a business. And so that's one of the things that I spend a lot of my time doing is really just like defining operations and helping people understand how it can be used alongside all these other tools to really help scale and grow. And it was really that case for me too. Like when I first stepped into my first operations role, I didn't even know what operations was. I didn't even know that is actually what I was doing. I originally came onto that first marketing agency actually as an account manager. They had just like let go of two people very quickly. I needed to step in and fill a gap. And once I got into that role, it was just so intuitive to me that like, oh my God, all these systems are so messy or could be working so much more efficiently or just straight broken, right? And without really knowing what I was doing, I just started fixing things. I just started cleaning things up. I just started kind of reorganizing things in a way that made intuitive sense to me. And it was only after really realizing I really loved that, being able to explore that further with that company, getting mentors around me that helped me define and hone that skill set, that I was really able to understand like, oh, I guess what this is operations. And from there, it was big, self-education journey of like learning things, applying them in the business, seeing what worked, and eventually like building a picture around what operations is and the role it fills.
Gotcha. So you kind of fell into it and then you kind of just, you're like, oh, there's a title for what I do. It's not just
right, exactly.
everything. So I get you, which is funny because that's, the same thing. It's, I don't know. I don't even know what my title is at this point. Pick one. Right. So
exactly.
That's pretty cool though. Okay. So someone actually told you, and then you kind of just gravitated towards you geeked out on the operations side of things. Right.
Very much so.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that's 5 years you've been doing that for?
About 5 years.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So you actually, last time we talked, I'm not sure if you still work for this company or not, but I'm curious to see how you actually, was this the company you were talking about? Was like Joel Kaplan's, was that
so Joel and his business partner at the time, Marcos, they started the agency together. That was the first business that they ran. And then after, 3.5, maybe 4 years of the agency, Joel started 7-figure agency, now Agency Lab. So I've known Joel and Marcos since the very beginning. Actually, how I got into this is I'm Marcos's ex-girlfriend. Like it was just like a relational thing, right? Like I knew nothing about business when I first met Joel and Marcos. And I learned about it, a lot of it from just observing and starting to offer insights as it made sense to me. And so I worked with Atlas Digital, that original agency, for over a year as their COO on their team. And then decided it was a better fit for me to be working with Joel in the COO capacity in his company from there. And as of right now, I'm a former COO, so I'm not on their team. I'm still their head operations coach, and I still do a lot of coaching in their community, but I am a free agent now.
Gotcha. So you're off on your own. You realize the potential of going off on your own, not sticking in one company.
Well, and what I realized is that like it was very hard for me to fully own operations as an identity and as a skill I wanted to hone, because I've been a very impact driven person always. And if you look at the landscape, like the social media landscape of our market, the only type that you really see represented out there is the visionary, right? It's like the bold leader out in front, leading the charge, coming up with these amazing business ideas. And I just never really resonated with that person ever. And I felt a major disconnect between the amount of impact and influence I wanted to have compared to the only model for having that influence that I saw, which is that you have to come up with your own vision and execute on that. Right. What I realized as an operator, and the driving why for me, is because I'm not that person. I love having like scaling visions in the world, but they just aren't mine, right? My job, my impact in the world is to help visions come to life by helping unlock the growth potential of that individual visionary and their team and their systems and their company, so that that vision can be seen in the world, right? But it's not my vision. And so when making the decision to start my own company, it's still just that. Like, I don't see myself as having my own vision. My vision is to help other people unlock their visions. And me having my own business just happened to be the best way to do that.
Right. And what would you say is because I love that, by the way, that's powerful stuff. And I could see why companies would really, benefit from your expertise. Because honestly, you're the hardest part, I think, is not being able to see everything from the overall bird's eye view of things. Right. Mm-hmm. Same with me. I get lost in my own stuff all the time. So I'm just curious, what was where did, just for example purposes, right, the company that you walked into to after working with you, what did that look like? What's the difference there?
You're saying like now, like a client I'd be working with today?
No, yes, but also like when someone hires you, right? If I were to hire you, let's just say you take a look at like a previous case study, I guess you can call it, right? You can use Joe Kaplan as an example without giving away too many numbers and details and that kind of stuff. But for before and after working with you is basically what I'm curious about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like when I start to work with any business, whether it was in the capacity of COO or not, it starts by diagnosing bottlenecks, right? Every company has growth goals. Every company has a timeline for it that they want to accomplish those goals by. So my first step is to get, first off, very clear on what that vision is, and then take a look at the business through the lens of, cool, what about its infrastructure, systems, team is not going to get them to those goals on that timeline? What's going to break? What's going to not be enough? What needs to evolve or be revamped or doesn't exist and needs to come into being in order for them to hit that definition of success, right? And so one of the things I'll provide for my consulting clients is at the very beginning is an audit where I take a look at the entire business and I literally build them a report that says, here's the 15 to 20 items that represent those growth bottlenecks, right? Here's where your team, here's what the gaps you need to fill on your team. Here's where you need to level up yourself and your own leadership style. Here's where you need to implement management and better management practices. Here's where your data is lacking. Here's where your systems are lacking, right? I take a very comprehensive, broad view of operations, obviously. And so I look at everything. And that's really where it starts, right? I think the value of ops is seeing the horizontal picture, right? Ops is the only department that isn't a department. Its job is to exist across all departments. Yeah. And so to have that lens, especially if they don't have an operator already on their team, it can unearth a lot of things that nobody was looking at because it was nobody's responsibility to look there, right? Okay. So that's the first step, right? Get a clear picture, diagnose the bottlenecks, see where things are breaking or are going to break, build that picture, and then work with that team to design and execute solutions that take the highest priority bottleneck first, and we work down the list from there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you mentioned 15 to 20 like items that could potentially be, is that like I guess you can say a reasonably expected number of things? Was that like a business that's like just in the gutter? Like, what is that? Yeah, sure. Is that a common thing?
I would say that that's pretty reasonably expected in the audits that I've done. That's kind of where we average out to. And generally, if you give a person, in my experience, if you give a person more than that, they start to get a little overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, is everything just a mess, right? So it's also manageable. But yeah, I think at every stage of growth, what's cool about business is that it's constantly asking us to evolve, right? Mm-hmm. Anything that got us up to that point in our business is not the thing that's going to get us to the next stage. We have to evolve. We have to recognize that there's a new skill set to develop or a new area of expertise to hire in, or a new system, or whatever it is, right? Every stage of business requires something new. And so however good of a job they've done up until now, there's something that comes next. And so it's just helping them understand that and make them aware of it and get them on board with, cool, I guess this is what the business is asking me to evolve next.
I see. Just naturally, like you can already, it's like predicting what the next stage of the conveyor belt, if you want to call it that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. After having seen the hundreds of businesses that I have at this point, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of here's where you are, here's what the next steps look like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause you work with digital companies, right? So that's like your thing. It's not like Tesla's asking you to come in and help them streamline stuff.
Not yet. That would be cool, but I would not be up to that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, let me call Elon.
Yeah, wait, actually I've got it on speed dial.
I'll call him up for you. That's awesome. Okay. So I know you mentioned that there's like a good handful of things to work out, but what is there like a common, like across the board, is always like one mistake that like most businesses or entrepreneurs like make? What would that like? It doesn't have to be one, but like, what's
I would say certainly it depends on the stage of the business, right? And I think the enormous caveat around all of this, guys, is like, if you're listening to this, you have to understand what operations looks like for your business at your stage, right? If you are in a 0 to 10K kind of range per month, frankly, don't focus on operations. Operations is a distraction, and that's coming from the head of operations, right? Like, focus on sales. That is all that matters. Get your sales and your acquisition machine dialed. Any operations should be around making that happen. It should all be on the acquisition side, right? Once you start to you have a sales process dialed in and a way of finding those people and closing them. You have a product that you can do. You have tested it. It works, right? And you're able to actually fulfill on what you're saying you can do. Then we get into the realm of operations. So that can happen anywhere in like the 10 to 20K per month range. Generally, at that point, you've proven that you have a thing, you can sell the thing, you can fulfill on the thing. Now we're talking about how do we do that better, faster, with more people at scale? How do I build a team? And from there, all of that is the realm of operations. So once you get to that point, right? So that's one enormous disclaimer. Once you get to that point, I think probably the biggest bottleneck that I see entrepreneurs hit at that moment or somewhere along that journey is in making the transition from a business that got to that level of success because of what they could do as an individual. It came down to their success up until that moment comes down to how hard can I work? How innovative can I be? How many things can I get done in a single day? And it evolves to how well can I inspire others? How well can I build an environment where innovative ideas are always coming to the surface? How well can I inspire and encourage and support others to execute the things that I used to do? It's not about you anymore. That's the really hard part about it. There's like kind of this ego death that happens because it's not about you anymore. Right. And a lot of people, I think, start building a business, perhaps because of it kind of feeds that self-importance, which is a bad term, but I'm not saying it in a bad way, right? Like, I think it's an amazing thing. And to evolve to the next stage of leadership, it stops being about what you are doing and starts being about what others are doing. And there can be a very difficult mental and emotional transition that happens there that some entrepreneurs are able to make. And if they make it, they're able to scale up to the next level. And some entrepreneurs, frankly, never are. And so they build something until it starts to stagnate. They get bored with it. They sell it or they quit it. And then they'll start the next thing and they'll stay in that part of the process, which again, totally fine. Totally fine. But there's a reason that most founders are not the same people as the CEOs who end up scaling those businesses. That's
interesting. I never even thought about that. It's like you reach a certain point, you fall off because it's not really something that you are looking to. I think the biggest thing is like most people are trying to, like you said, the keywords were when you get there, right? 10 to 20. Sure. We're swinging for the fences like right away. We're trying to figure out how to scale before the actual process is proven and the outcome is results driven kind of thing, right? Your sales team is dialed in and all that stuff. There's so many different things that go into scaling, right? Yep. It's not as easy as just, okay, I'm going to get a $15,000 client today. Like, yes, it's not that simple. We don't have anything to work off. So I love that you just mentioned that. It's really very true insight. Even when I think about what I've been doing, I'm like, okay, this is something I need to take a step back and focus on this. Because when this happens, growth, right? Yeah, totally, so love that.
And in those very initial stages, what I say ops is a distraction because I think people can use it as a way of feeling good, like feeling like they're working on the business, they're making the business better. Like, oh, I built an SOP today. It's like, great, but you don't have anybody to give that SOP to, right? Like, why? You don't need an SOP. You know how to do the thing. You don't need an SOP right now, right? But it's this kind of this stand in, this excuse of like, oh, I hear businesses should have SOPs, so I went ahead and knocked mine out, right? That's not an efficient use of your time. That's not the highest value thing you could be doing for the business right now. And I know it's easier to build the SOP than get rejected on another sales call, but that's really where the business needs your attention.
Well, it's like what the common misconception, right? Just because you are busy doesn't mean you're productive.
Totally.
Right. I've almost on a daily basis, I have to question what the heck I'm doing. I'm like, am I doing this because it's actually productive? Or am I doing this to stay busy and avoid the thing I should be doing? So I have to really dial it down and figure out what it is. That's why I have a bunch of Post-it notes around my desk to say, do this thing. So I keep myself in line. You know what I mean? Not the best form of organization. I use other things too, but it's nice to put pen to paper and have it in front of you.
Whatever works, man.
Digital,
works.
Absolutely. So how do you stay organized for yourself within your own business, right?
Totally. Yeah. So I let project managers and my Google Calendar run my life. I have my own kind of custom dashboard that I fill out and click up that prioritizes and organizes my tasks. I run my entire business out of that. So my team is also dialed in. I'm able to see their tasks in there. We're able to like communally share, trade, manage tasks and projects in there. And then anything that is going to take up my time, I put it in my calendar. And I really try and time block out not just the meetings and the things that are happening, but the deep think time and the execute on this highest priority project time. Because otherwise I know that time will just get eaten up. So unless I protect it and block it out, I know it's probably not going to happen.
Right. That's really, really, the fact that you incorporate deep thinking, right? What can I pick your brain? What are you deep thinking about?
Totally. Yeah. So for anybody who's like, oh, deep thinking, I don't do that. The book I would highly recommend, it's called The Road Less Stupid. The Road Less Stupid. The guiding thesis is that the world's most successful people don't make more intelligent decisions. They just make less stupid ones. Right. Gotcha. And the reason they can make less stupid ones is because they set aside time to actually take a look at the decisions, the ideas, the opportunities that come up. And they intentionally build in time to take a step out of the weeds, out of the day-to-day, consider the higher picture, look in their own blind spots and see what they're not normally seeing, and make less stupid decisions informed by all of that data.
Right.
So I would highly recommend it. But yeah, it's you as the owner are the only person who has the entire view. It is the job that only you can do. You cannot delegate it because there's nobody else in the company who has that same view and that same level of visibility. They just don't. And they don't know what the vision is that's trying to be built here. And so it's a job that I often see CEOs, I wouldn't say that they abdicate it, or even delegate it. It's just that they don't prioritize it. And in the day-to-day of the business, there's so much to do that it just never gets done, right? Yeah. Oh, I have to show up on this client meeting, or I have to show up on this team meeting, right? They'll show up in the ways that there's other people in the business that you can delegate those things to, that are actually able, and their role is actually by definition to take ownership over that client meeting. There's one role that only you can do, and I so very rarely see CEOs actually doing it.
Yeah. What are they doing instead?
Just allowing the business to guide them, showing up in reactivity to their own business, to the market and what the market is telling them. What a client today told them, hey, I want this service. Cool. I guess we're building this service out. I'm going to go ahead and build this service out. Right. And it's really funny because when the visionary shows up in reaction, now your team is showing up in reaction, right? I see all the time visionaries will complain like, hey, my team is not being proactive. I'm like, well, it's impossible to be proactive if you don't know what you're building, right? You can't. There's nothing. I don't know if this is the right direction or this is the right direction. How could I be proactive?
Yeah.
And so the visionary is allowing them, the business, to define their day-to-day in that way, almost guaranteed. They're turning around, doling out tasks to their team, and they've put their team in a state of perpetual reactivity as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you are letting the opportunity and potential to make more money being guided by someone else dictating the direction of your business by adding in some email marketing service when you hate emails. Right. So
exactly.
I could totally see that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really fascinating. So what advice would you give to the person that is, let me just rephrase it. Let's just say, like I own a business, right? It's a pretty substantial income coming in, maybe 100K a month, whatever it is.
Okay.
And I have dozens of clients at this point, but there's like, I could see where things are going to end. I could see where things are going to start potentially being an issue. What do you recommend for someone in that position where you're already like deep in the business and you're not in that sweet spot of 10 to 20? Now you're in the chaos of 80 to 100, right? What do you recommend? What would you look for first? And how would you really kind of guide that business to take better shape?
Okay. I would probably say, first off, start by making sure you have absolute clarity on your long-term vision. This is really critical because I think a lot of people only focus on what does the business need,
right?
And they allow that to determine what their life is going to look like. It is one of the very few perks of being an owner where you actually get to decide what this business is going to look like. You get to choose. It's always a choice, right? People feel very locked in by like growth for the sake of growth, or we have to do this next product because the money's just lying there on the table.
Right.
No, you don't, right? You get to decide it every single step of the way. So starting at the end and really getting clear on what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my relationship to this business to look like 12 months from now? How often am I showing up and what capacity am I showing up, right? Yeah. What is this business bringing to me? And designing the business that will allow you to accomplish that overarching 360-degree definition of success, right? Get clear on that first. Then we know what the business has to look like at the end point. And now we can reverse engineer a strategy of actually getting there. So instead of saying the business has this opportunity, I'm reacting to that opportunity, I'm going to take it. Saying this is the business that I'm building. And here are the opportunities on the table. Which one of those maps me closer to that desired outcome?
Right.
So starting at the end, reverse engineering the strategy that will get you there, and then quantifying it in targets, departmental targets. So if I know that I want a 500K per month agency, right, whatever, and I know that what that is going to take is a sales team generating 40 sales a month and a fulfillment team generating 15K lifetime value. I don't know if those numbers actually check. This is a guess. Beautiful. 15K lifetime value. That's something I can hand to my account managers and give them ownership over this deliverable. This is a long-winded answer of saying the number one thing I would recommend this person does is transfer ownership over the results to their team, because you are no longer single-handedly driving lifetime value. Your account manager is. But they probably don't know that. Not unless you explicitly transfer ownership to them, give them the metric. Here's where we're at now. Here's the target. And now you tell me, how can I support you in moving the needle?
Yeah. Having that vision conversation, right? I mean, do you, I'm assuming that you believe in like meetings, right? Between
I do.
Okay. I'm assuming because if everyone's on the same page, everyone's in good shape, right? They all kind of know this is where we're headed. I think that also helps with people. Maybe this is a statistic that I don't really know about, but I'm assuming that really helps employees stay on board as opposed to looking for other opportunities, right?
Oh my God,
if
yes.
you know where you're headed, then you're like, oh, I want to be a part of that. That's awesome. That means more money all around, right? Everyone's happy. I grow, you grow. I'm getting smarter. So I think one of the hardest things is like when you work for a company and you feel like you're stuck, like you don't have, like you're not growing, your income's at a wall, and your boss is kind of, not really being innovative or whatever it is, that lack of inspiration, right?
100%.
I think, I hear that all the time in like 9-to-5s, especially.
Oh, and we're seeing it, right? Like everybody's so shocked that we're in this great resignation.
Right.
I'm not surprised at all. Because all that it is COVID jarring everybody into the reality that, holy shit, we now have choices. I don't need to work at this shitty 9-to-5 in an office where people don't care about me and I hate showing up to work every day. I actually can choose something else. Why wouldn't I? Right. And it's kind of this beautiful thing. I think it's actually net positive because it is putting the stressor, the market is turning against the businesses, and the competitive environment is now the businesses who can create the best working environment, who can earn the right to the A player. And if you as a business have not invested in your HR and in your culture and in your vision and your mission and aligning your whys with your team and building a high performance environment, if you're not doing these things, you don't have a competitive offer. That
Right.
A player is not going to come to you, because why would they? They have options, right? And so it's actually sending businesses through the ringer a little bit right now, where they have to really evolve to what they should have always been doing,
Right.
which is providing a vehicle for growth to their teams. That's it, right?
Yep.
Business at its best is a vehicle for growth for all its stakeholders, its clients, its owner, and its team. And if you're not providing that, you don't have a good offer.
Right. That's so blunt and straightforward that it's like people need to hear that, because there's you probably even seen this with Joe Kaplan's company, right? People come in and they're not necessarily the best fit for the program, and that sucks, right, for everyone involved. So it's almost like, I don't want to say that not everybody is cut out for entrepreneurship, but I think that not everybody is cut out for entrepreneurship, right? But it's also like it's a mindset behind it.
Sure.
Right? It's a shift.
Or being a solopreneur versus a manager, right? I think that's the big key. Is like everybody wants to be a leader. Very few people want to be a manager.
Right. What would you determine as the difference there?
I would say a leader, when they look at a forest, they see a forest. When a manager looks at a forest, they see the tree. Right? A manager individualizes. A manager focuses on the unique skills and talents of the individual and focuses on cultivating an environment where that talent can offer its highest performance and value in the business. Not because I'm telling you what to do, but because you want to provide that, because that's your zone of genius and that's where you feel inspired to show up and do your best work. Right. And so they create and they individualize this environment and then scale that up across a team to make sure there's a strong and healthy team dynamic there. And really the only job of a manager is to answer the question. Actually, this is proven. Gallup did a poll, right? The number one characterizing question of exceptional management is when their teams can answer positively to the statement, I have the opportunity and support to do my best work every day.
Ooh.
That's it.
Wow.
You as a manager, your job is to give your team the opportunity and the support to do their best work every day. It's not about you.
Yep. Wow. I'm going to write that down to get set up my tattoo.
Good question.
That tattooed on me. So that was awesome. That's I never heard like that before. I'm really glad that came up so we could, elaborate on that a little bit. That's where did you learn that perspective from?
There's an incredible book that actually details all the findings from this Gallup poll. It's called First Break All the Rules. And it essentially is this study that says, here's why what we statistically have learned about exceptional management contradicts everything in the mainstream narrative around what management is.
Right. Wow. That I'm taking notes on that.
Great book.
Both these books. I'm such a book advocate, kind of. So
me too, dude.
I have how many books do you have on your Amazon cart right now? Let's compare.
I just buy them. They're sitting in my Audible library, just piling up.
Oh yeah. I have to. That's smart. I have probably like 94 in my cart right now.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, you definitely beat me there.
So I have too many, but I don't put enough stress like I used to on reading, right? Things are just so chaotic all the time. But again, I'm working very much in and I'm trying to be out. So, so this is really, really helpful for me. And I hope it's helpful for everyone else too. You kind of elaborate a little bit on like the mindset behind like when it comes to entrepreneurship and like running a business, but do you want to talk a little bit more about what it takes and what helps you operate your business, not in a reactive state, but in a, this makes the most sense, like logical, right? Yeah,
right. I would say that it is really important to have a underlying why and have a lot of clarity around that. Mm-hmm. Specifically because I think a lot of people will start entrepreneurship or start a side hustle or whatever for the cash flow straightly, right? It's just a monetary move. I see the opportunity on the table. Here's how I can make it happen. And frankly, that's the entrepreneur's gift, right? Is to see a place where people are not being served, see an opportunity to serve them and close the gap. That's all it is. So that's beautiful. Don't leave that, right? The challenge is there's a bajillion ways to make money. I say this to my leadership teams all the time. Guys, you are so good at making money. Don't worry about that. You're going to make the money. Don't worry, right? The question to answer is, why are we making this money? Right. Because that determines if we're going to make money in this way or this one, whether we're going to take this strategy or this one, this offer or this one, this opportunity, this partnership, this product, this deal, whatever it is, right? unless you have a underlying or an overarching rubric about how to make that decision and how to run that analysis and measure one up against the other. If it's just money and where the most amount of money is in front of you in that moment, you're not building anything cohesive. There's no consistency there because there's no overarching guideline.
Right.
And the reality is that everybody makes money, but they do have an underlying why. Maybe they have something to prove. Maybe it's to provide for their loved ones. Maybe it's to give back to their community. But whatever it is, get really clear on that and put that as the central guiding rubric for everything you say yes to, and more importantly, everything you say no to. You asked me the big difference between like startup mindset versus scaling mindset. When you're a startup entrepreneur, success is defined by what you say yes to. It's your willingness to try things and fail at them and try again, right? It's a trial and error process.
True.
It's messy. Scaling a business is defined by what you say no to. Are you willing and able to say no to the good opportunity and wait for the great one?
Right.
Are you willing to say no to the thing that could make you a lot of money in the short term, but in the long term will only serve to distract your team, like bomb your systems, throw everything into chaos, and leave you in a state of rebuilding 6 months from now? What do you say no to?
Wow, that's a really good point. I mean, I think that happens more often than not, right? People saying yes to a good opportunity and not being willing to hold off for the great one while they're simultaneously, obviously growing what the existing thing is they have, right? Have you ever, that's such great perspective. I really appreciate you sharing that. Have you ever come across a business where they like stopped too soon and you look at them and you're like, oh, there was a lot more potential here, but you either sold or you changed offers, that kind of thing. Have you seen that before?
Totally. And I think you see it a lot. I think like probably the most obvious example is like niche selection, right? People switching niches 10 times in 10 months, right?
Yeah. Digital marketers, 100%. Digital marketers.
And it's true for any business, right? Like any business needs its niche. And so 100%, I think that when you define a niche, what am I trying to say here? If you're choosing your niche based off of where you think you're going to have the easiest time, you're going to have a bad time. Because there is no easy niche. There is no perfect niche. I've seen hundreds of digital marketing agencies in all kinds of niches. They all work. They all can work, right? I saw a 7-figure agency where there's like 360 of their business type in the entire United States. It's the tiniest fucking market in the world. And they were a 7-figure agency, right? Like any niche can work.
Wow.
But if you go into the selection process thinking, where am I going to have the easiest time? You're setting yourself up for failure because the grass will always be greener. If you go into the selection process saying, which problems am I interested in solving?
Exactly.
Then when the problems come, you've already signed on for that. You're already committed to that. That's exactly what you expected to find. You found it. And now we can keep moving forward and work on solving the problem, as opposed to pivoting to where I perceive there being less problems. And that's true for any strategic decision, any offer, any product, right? Making the distinction, not just on where can I make the most money, but where does this solve a problem that I'm interested in solving? Because I'm assuming I'm going to run into a problem here. Right. And then that gives you the perseverance that you need to solve the problem, which is actually the value that you're providing to that market and actually what they're paying you to do.
Yeah, totally. I think, because that's something my early entrepreneur days, right? I bounced around from different ideas to different ideas all the time. And then I circled back into the original idea. And then I realized I didn't want to do that either. So it was a matter of I had to really think about it. What is it that I enjoy doing, right? I like people. I like helping people. I like, XYZ. And I started listing out, like, how can I, put that into a business where I'm sustaining it, not just chasing the dollar, right? Because the way I relate to it when I do talk to digital marketers, I'm thinking, okay, think about a niche that you don't hate, right? That you could see yourself having a conversation with the owner again and again and again. Because if for example, law, I do not mix well with law and medical supplies and all that stuff, right? If I had to pick that because I know they're worth the big bucks, I would hate my business. Right. So I have to
Totally.
relate it to that way too for them by saying, pick something that you wouldn't mind talking about over and over again. What's
Yeah.
near and dear to your heart? I went into the like mental health clinics because that was near and dear to my heart. And it was so easy for me to talk. And at the same time, there was like empathy there. I empathized
Yeah.
with what they're doing and I really saw the value. Anyway, so I think what you're saying is very true. If you had to pick one, this might be a tough question, right? If you had to pick one where, because this is almost like a trick question, but just play along, right?
Okay.
So would you say that the fortune is in the follow-up, or would you say that the riches are in the niches?
I've never heard that. I'm like trying to unpack that phrase.
It's a tough. I mean, I feel like it's a tough one, but I think there's some thought behind that.
Yeah, I would agree.
This is just a thought that I thought of earlier today. I was like, I wonder what we should do. Obviously, you can feed both, and they're both going to help you, right? But if you had to pick one to save for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Probably the riches are in the niches.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I take a different view of the term niche. I think a niche can be a particular demographic. It can be a particular type of person.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another way of defining a niche. This is the way I've defined my niche for my business, right? Which is a niche as a particular problem to solve, right? Like my niche is any business owner with the problem that their business has stopped growing and they don't know why. That's my niche, right? It's not digital marketing agencies. It's not entrepreneurs doing between 20K and 100K per month, right? It is a specific problem that I am passionate about solving. And there is so much more room to move in that definition of a niche that allows me, as long as that's the problem I continue to be passionate about solving, my business is able to grow and evolve as it needs to.
Right.
So I would say the latter, riches in the niches, because if you are defining your niche based off of a problem that you feel passionate about solving, you have a sustainable pathway to success, because you'll wake up today and be passionate about it, and you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll still be passionate about it, and you'll wake up next year and you'll still be passionate about solving that problem. Versus follow-up and constant rejection and all the things that you face as a business owner, right? Those things are still going to happen. And if there isn't anything underneath that driving you forward to accomplish it, you're going to burn out, you're going to give up, you're going to pivot, right? Because why wouldn't you? Like literally, why wouldn't you? That's just a human reaction to move away from pain and move away from fear, right? And so I would say riches in the niches, because I think that is the only way to set yourself up for long-term success, as defined by an ability to show up sustainably day after day and continue to put in the work.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100%. I think I'm kind of a firm believer in do something because you are enjoying to do it, and the money will follow. Right. I really think that's what's always happened to me. I'm doing things because I love to do it, and I'm growing as I'm doing it. I'm learning as much as I can. Right. And it's naturally bringing opportunities because I'm looking, not even searching for opportunities. I see the opportunities when they come up. Right. But now that I know, I got to wait for the great ones, not the good ones. So whole different story now. But so I love that. Great perspective here. Really, really great perspective. I want to give you a little bit of an opportunity to throw some bragging into the mix here. So tell me what's your biggest like bragging story for either a company you've worked with or a project you've built yourself, that kind of thing. What's your, if I told you to give me, you have full bragging rights right now, what would that be? Where's your mind go?
Okay.
Like, oh, there's so many. Where do I start?
No, it's interesting. My personal favorite success story, the thing I'm most proud of that I've ever done, and it's going to sound very strange, and it's probably the opposite of what you're imagining, is I helped a client fire himself from his business. Full on, quit, get fired by his leadership team because he'd done the work to build a leadership team that was strong enough to tell him that he had to go.
Wow.
Very weird thing. But the reality is that that was his desired outcome. That was his definition of success. And when I first met him, he was very locked in. He was very trapped. He was the singular actual bottleneck to his entire company moving forward. The whole company was paused because he was everywhere all at once, had to make every decision, had to sign off on everything, had to execute everything, right? This is like a 250, 300K per month business.
Wow.
Within 4 months, he was out of the company. And that is something I'm very proud of, because when you don't want to be in your company, you're not the best person to take your company through to the next level. And for me as a consultant, my job here is to help the business succeed. And what the business needs is for a COO to want to be a COO.
Right.
It's for the CEO to really understand what it means to be a CEO and step into that role and take full ownership for that role. And that was not him. And he knew that wasn't him, but he had no way of getting out of that position. Did not see a way out. He had built everything in the business such that it could not operate without him. And it's something I'm very proud of that I helped him do. And he's on to his next business venture, something that he's deeply passionate about and is so lit up by. And he's traveling and, living in Mexico and doing the things that he always told himself he would do when X, right? When I've made a certain amount of money or when my business is at a certain size.
Wow. And you did that in 4 months. It doesn't take that. You move fast, Jhana. Jeez. Well, I mean, that's good news though. Cause that's for anyone that's, listening to this or checking this talk out between us, right? They're probably curious about like, well, I wonder how she works. How's that going to benefit my business? Well, now you know that if you don't want to work in your business, hire you so you can figure out how to get out of the business and still be growing, right? Putting those things in place, which I think is really, really important. Because a lot of people start a business either because they love whatever there is that they're doing, but quickly realize that, okay, I can only do so much. So how do I even go about hiring someone to take over X, Y, and Z? How do I trust somebody, and it's really hard, right? To be able to trust someone to take over something that you care so much about. But I'm assuming that you have an opportunity to kind of coach them through all that stuff too. So
it's certainly mindset work, and it's also systems, right? Like, how do I maintain accountability so that if this person is not doing what they need to be doing, I know that, and I'm able to do something about it, right? I'm able to hold them to high performance standards and know when they meet them or not. Like, there's a lot of very tangible structure, systems, data, processes that we can put in place in a business. It sounds very idealistic, and I think I have a pretty idealistic view of the world. But like, shit goes wrong. People don't show up. People drop the ball, right? All of these things happen. Really solid operations plans for those contingencies.
Right. That's interesting. Okay. So, I mean, this can be an hour of a conversation too. I'm just curious. Maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point. But I am definitely curious about that. Like, how do you set yourself up for things like that? It's like a whole system. Is that where SOPs come in handy? Like, we need to fill in, watch this video so you can do it.
SOPs are great, but then your SOP needs to take into account the contingency that what happens if the SOP breaks, right? So I think that like a really rigorous system. Have you heard of the term antifragile?
No, I don't think so.
So it's essentially this spectrum, right? You have fragile. Fragile is something happens to it, it breaks, right? Most SOPs are fragile.
Yeah.
If the onboarding form doesn't get filled out, the onboarding process does not get launched. Fragile, very easy to break. Then you have robust. Robust is something tries to break it and it doesn't break, right? The onboarding form didn't get filled out, but we have a contingency notification that gets sent to me that if a client submits payment and they haven't scheduled their launch call within 48 hours, I get a notification.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
I would say like exceptional operations are at a minimum robust. Right? They plan for balls to be dropped. They plan for human error. They plan for the person to not follow the system. They plan for the payments not to go through. They plan for the client not doing the thing that the client needs to do, right? The clients never do that. We know that. So we plan for it, right? They plan for the person to leave, right? They plan for team turnover, these sorts of things. You have to build in a structure for these things because they are inevitable. Like, they are going to happen. And if you build your systems for the best case scenario, they're not going to work. They will break. I promise you they will break because bad things happen, right? So plan for that. Know that, assume it, and build the contingency in. And then the final tier is anti-fragile. Anti-fragile means that when a system takes a shock, it actually gets better for it. So the most perfect example of an antifragile system is the human body, right? When we want to train and grow a muscle, we actually have to rip our muscles apart and break them in order for them to come back stronger. Right?
Yeah.
In order for our immune system to get stronger, we have to be sick, and we have to get, like, that's what a vaccine is, right? Get a small viral load so that we can handle it and we can be stronger against a bigger load.
Right.
So the best systems are anti-fragile. And the hard thing is that I've yet to figure out how to build an anti-fragile SOP. Okay? You lock everybody into being a cog in a machine and a process and a workflow, and there's a contingency for that. The best you can do is robust.
Right.
If you want to build something actually anti-fragile, that comes down to how you build your team, how you manage your people. You create a mindset where shocks to the system are seen as an opportunity to get better, and have you created an environment with the best ideas at those moments.
Wow. So did you say that you have yet to figure out how to create anti-fragile, or you have yet to see?
I think when it comes to traditional perceptions of operations, like an SOP and like having an automated agency, right? I hear that all the time. Automate my agency.
Right.
Okay.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time. At best, your automated agency will be robust, because what you're talking about when you say automate your agency, like nobody has to even look at that thing. It's just running, right? Is a system that follows a complicated series of steps, that does it right every single time, and that gets the end result, right? And when something tries to shock that system, it's able to absorb it. It doesn't break it. The whole thing doesn't shatter and fall apart, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's different than a system that's actually going to grow, a system that's going to get better in the face of those shocks, right? And so I've seen businesses where the operation geniuses have built automated agencies, and they run well for a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe the longest I saw was 4 years. And when they burn, boy, do they burn. They crash and burn. Because at the end of the day, you stepped out of a dynamic environment, and you did not leave anybody behind to manage the dynamic environment and to make decisions and react to what is always a dynamic environment. That's the market. That's marketing agencies, right? That's the internet.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a bit of a false ideal, first off, an automated agency. I think you can have a successful agency that can run well for a long time. But if you aren't building a team where people can individually react and show up and become better for the challenges that the market presents to them, you're not building something that can sustain it fast.
Yeah. Wow. These are things that weren't even on my radar. So I'm so glad that you're sharing all this, because it really gives me a little bit of insight on what needs to be done for when that time comes, right? When the time comes, don't focus on it now, right?
Totally.
Because then it's like you're almost scrapping everything you did, because it's a whole different process, maybe, right? You're not really scaling at that point until you get to the point when you're scaling. Then you can probably put those processes in place.
Totally. Don't do more than you need to do in the moment. 100%.
Right.
Don't build the SOP before you have somebody to teach it to. Like, let's not waste our time on that.
That's true. Yeah, because you're not going to be hiring a VA from the Philippines and give them this SOP necessarily, right? I guess it depends on the task, but on the other processes, right, behind the scenes to actually run and grow your business, that's kind of different story there. So this has been super helpful, Jhana. Thank you. I really, really do appreciate your time. Where can we actually get in touch with you? What's the best place to get in touch with you?
Yeah, totally. So the website is still in the works. So I'd say if you want to get in touch with me, find me on Facebook, shoot me a direct message, or shoot me an email.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Jhana. I will talk to you next time then.
Okay, beautiful. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.